our whole big album party for LA, so everybody was there. It was ridiculous. And that's like, I don't even remember that shot, you know, because they were like, so I mean, what I remember about that night was Kaz was living out in LA and doing some stuff out there. And right after we performed, he like came up, you know, gave us dab. He gave me his card with his number on. He's like, "Yo, we should work together." It was like, you know, like a legend like Kaz coming up to us and, you know, seeing him for so long. It was like that was like like one of the biggest thrills. And that's what I remember, like Kaz even more than all the West Coast guys. And then you see that picture, and then you just see the, you know, Doom. You got even Serge is all the way in the back, like the Where's Waldo, all the way up in the corner. And yeah, it was a crazy night because even and that's actually the infamous night that, you know, most people don't remember. Like right at that point when our album came out, when LL had done Walking Like a Panther. I mean, although it probably went double platinum or whatever, you know, for LL, he was like on such a incline up. Like he kind of took a little detour just for a minute, and he wasn't like on top the way that he had been. So there were people like questioning, like, is LL still as hot as he was before? And people looked at even Walking with the Panther as like a bit of a failure because it wasn't like triple or quadruple platinum. So LL knew that, you know, he was going to come back hard. He was in the studio with Marley. And, you know, when anyone would come to our shows or anything we would do, we would let everyone come up after the performance or whatever, just to freestyle, get loose or whatever. So I'm pretty sure LL planned that night, you know, that he was going to try out the new material. And we had, right after we finished that set, it was like me and Serge rhyming, and then Doom came on, and then De La came on. Even Mace was rhyming a bit on there. I have some pictures of him. And then LL came on, and like he just stole the show. Like he was, you know, I don't know if he was doing "Mama Said Knock You Out" before it came out and just other rhymes, but you know, he just killed it. I think the LA Times the next day was like, oh, you know, Third Base had this album party, but LL stole the spotlight. So, but that was that night, like where everybody was there. I mean, it was ridiculous.
So, give me a great memory of the time when you guys were recording the Cactus album.
All right. Well, it took a long time to record that album. Now, while we had, like, you know, legendary Chung King is where we recorded most of it, and most of those tracks were with Sam Sever. And you know, Sam's just an incredible producer, and you know, Just Ice was one of my favorite artists, and I was managed by Lumumba when he was managing Just Ice. So, you know, to have the guy that worked on Latoya, you know, was, you know, amazing. His work with Mantronics, Run DMC, everybody. So when we were in the studio there, I mean, we had just so many like running jokes, inside jokes, and things, you know, where, you know, Serge was comical at times in the studio, like when we did that Soul and Soul Out Your Asshole with Serge.
Right.
So I had this loop of this Tom Waits record with just that horn, and I was playing it for Sam, and then Sam just looped it up, and he just started, you know, on the SP12 on the MP6, he started just, you know, hitting it, and it was like just this funky like groove that was just going over and over and over, and we were just trying to lay it down on something else. Like I just thought it would be cool under like this one beat that we had. But while we were doing that, Serge just ran into the booth, and he just started, you know, kicking his whole soul out the asshole shit. And Sam just kept running it, and then Kevin Reynolds, our engineer, just recorded it. You know, he just started recording it, and next thing you know, we had, you know, a whole actual record. I mean, although it was a, you know, comedy skit type record, it was a record, and it even caused us to end up getting sued by Tom Waits, who, like, you know, heard it and thought we were mocking him and his voice, but it wasn't even that at all. I don't even think Serge knew 100% who Tom Waits was at the time, although, like, it's ironic that he sounded pretty close to, like, that raspy type voice.
Right.
I think he was going for more of, like, a down south blues old blues man type thing at the time.
Right.
But that's that's a interesting side note of the Cactus album. But maybe even more so, we did the first song for the Cactus album at Chung King, but then we Russell wanted us to get together with the Bomb Squad. So we went out to Hempstead to the Bomb Squad's, main, pre-production studio in Hempstead, and just working with those guys, with Keith Shockley, Eric Sadler, Vietnam, and with Hank. The running joke there was, Hank Shockley himself was like the biggest name in the music business or in hip hop just because of PE. He got all the light. But when we got in there, it was really like we were working with Keith and Eric. It was like Hank was almost like too big to like actually do all the pre-production stuff. So we would bust his balls, and we would like tell Keith and Eric like, "Yo, you guys, we're gonna give you extra light." And those guys, they're just musical geniuses too. So, but working with them in that spot was pretty amazing. And that's like, at the time, we took some pictures inside where they were doing all these different projects, and I think one of them was like to do the theme song for Yo MTV Raps. Another one was like Son of Berserk. All these like side projects. There was another one for like Heavy D where they were doing some stuff for Heavy D. So they were like in high demand, and of course being down with Rush, any producer who was down with Rush was sought after by a lot of other artists.
Give me best memory of your sophomore album, Derelicts of Dialect.
Like making it, or like
just that whole time, just going into it. Were you excited to be going into the studio, or were you kind of over it at that point?
No, we were. I mean, obviously everyone has that sophomore jinx that everybody talks about, so we wanted to come back hard, and we were a little more acclimated being in the studio, and also with the money that Def Jam or like Columbia would just let you spend all the money, but you find out that it's all getting charged back to you. So we were kind of like looking at more of a strategy as to how to make the most records and try to switch up studios. So Doom and Sub Rock were doing a lot of stuff on Mr. Hood and Calliope Studios, which was like kind of like in the Garment District, like I think like 34th Street, West Side, I think it's 37th Street. And we actually did the songs that we did with Prince Paul at Calliope, and we also did Ace in the Hole. I think we tracked Ace in the Hole at Calliope, and then we mixed it down at Chung King. So like working with KMD, like on Ace in the Hole was really dope for us. Where here are the kids we brought along, kind of nurtured them, and then had them make their own album, and then they're actually producing stuff for us. So that was amazing. Also, when we did the Derelicts, the other highlights were working with Nice and Smooth and Chubb Rock. So like that session with Greg and with Smooth was just ridiculous, just so much fun. But when we did Kick 'Em in the Grill with Chubbs, like people sleep on Chubb Rock. Like Chubbs is so nice, and like when he laid down that verse and the shit about Vanilla Ice, like it was just like everyone in the studio just was like screaming like, oh shit. And I remember my boy MC Reanimator from like the first skits on the Cactus album. He was there in the studio that night. He loved Chubb Rock, and it was just like he was screaming the loudest. Like he dropped that verse, it was just nuts. Fucking Chubbs is bad, and Chubbs definitely doesn't get like the full dap that he really deserves as an MC. I mean, everybody knows Chubbs is great, but I mean, he just kills it because he's from Brooklyn.
I felt like Rap Pages was always a kind of head of the game as far as covers go. What can you tell me about that?
Oh, right. Yeah, that actually was cool to get that cover because, at the time the Source was obviously the biggest publication. When Rap Pages came on, we would never get the cover of the Source. Like it would always be like, when our album came out, something else came out, and I don't know what the politics was there about getting the covers, but when we got the Rap Pages cover, it was like a kind of like a solidification that, you know, it was a good thing to see when you're getting a cover.
Dope. You co-produced Curious's Constipated Monkeys album. Take me back.
Right.
Take me back to a good memory from that whole process.
Well, you know, George, we originally helped Bobito get a spot at Def Jam, and I think Bob started out right in like college promotion, and then like he just worked his way up to owning college promotion straight through to, you know, promotion of everything. And George lived up by Bob in his building, and Bob put George on as like a messenger, I think, to start out. So he always used to be at Def Jam. George would be going out to all the parties, and George could freestyle like crazy off the top, and he was just everywhere, you know. And like George was like the up and coming MC, so we started to get George in the studio, you know, having him work on concepts, and then, you know, he was doing a lot of work with Dante in the SD50s, and also, you know, hanging pretty tight with Doom and Sub. So, you know, he had a lot of different producers in the zone, like, you know, working on his project. And originally he was set to go on Def Jam, and Def Jam was even paying for a lot of his studio bills. And at the time, Russell and Lior Cohen, like, we wanted to get more money for George in the beginning, and they like weren't giving it. It wasn't like, it was like 25 grand or whatever to just give to him. And at the same time, Faith Newman had left Def Jam and started at Columbia, and then she offered me like my own like label, you know, not full label deal, but like the imprint type label with Columbia, and, you know, gave more money and hooked that whole thing up that we wanted with Russell and them. So Russell and Lior were pretty upset. I kind of had a war with Lior over it because he at the same time was having a war with Donnie Ienner at Sony. So it was a shit show. But at the same time, like, creating George's album was, you know, a real gift in terms of like just his talent and everybody that he worked with, from, you know, Dell, Brand Nubians, you know, KMD, and just like his whole crew. Like, who thought Lord Seer would be who he is today when you saw or heard Lord Seer singing on, you know, Uptown Shit, you know? And, you know, there was just so many good memories of those guys. I mean, that was some crew. Like, and, you know, when they were together with KMD and with Sub Rock, it was just crazy. I mean, those guys knew how to party back then, no doubt. It was hard to control, you know what I'm saying? It was like a full-time job.
Give me a great memory of recording your debut album, Dust to Dust.
That was like after splitting up and everything, me and Rich got to work a lot together, you know, just delve right in musically, and we did it not at Chung King in one of the big studios, but one of our engineers. He set up a home studio, this guy Adam Gazzola. So, I mean, I think we just did a lot of experimentation, had a lot more freedom just to do whatever we wanted to do. And, you know, I mean, and of course working with the Beat Nuts, like, you know, always wanted to get input from other producers, and the Beat Nuts were working with George. And, you know, when Juju and Vic would just play these, you know, beats, it just threw me a tape. I was like, you know, these beats are sick, you know. So to be able to work with them too at a time when they were just establishing themselves, and to have, you know, Psycho Less's verse on like Rap Bastard was just like insane. Like, you know, we picked that to be the single, and it's hard when you come out as a soloist. Like, I wanted to get like the jam that we had with his verse on it to be the full single, but it was like too long for radio cuts and stuff. But, you know, I love his verse. Was one of my favorite verses of all time.
Dope.
On that record.
Yeah. We all know the relationship you have with Serge, so we won't get into that. We talked off the record. Right. What's your relationship like with Daddy Rich? Where is he at now?
Rich is out in Arizona, and, you know, we did some reunion stuff like back in 2012, and, you know, we really haven't kept in close contact since then.
Okay. At this point, I'd like to get into some fan questions. Been getting
Sure.
hit up all day, so I kind of keep it short.
Word.
Mr. Rozzi wants to know any more collaboration songs in the vault with Third Base and KMD, like the classic Gas Face.
Um, nah, nothing that we had recorded. And actually, I think a lot of our masters got lost. I do have when it was the saddest thing about the KMD situation was after Sub Rock passed and after What a Niggy Know was coming out and the album Black Bastards was set. Uh, Doom got caught up, and most people don't realize how intertwined it was. But when Ice-T had the whole cop killer controversy, that was Warner Brothers. So Warner Brothers was totally paranoid about anything that was controversial. And when they saw the Black Bastards album cover with the Sambo Hangman theme, they just bugged out, not knowing what it was, and like totally censored the group, dropped them. I mean, it was like pathetic. You know, like there's so many people that should be embarrassed for what happened with that. And you know, Doom basically lost out that whole opportunity for the whole album. And you know, for years that was just sitting there. And I had gotten into a lot of other business stuff and had moved like out of New York City. And Bob continued after we ended Hoppo Recordings to do Fondulum. And that's when Doom reemerged, and he was, you know, instrumental in Doom's resurgence. And that's at the point when they wanted to put out Black Bastards. And I remember, I think Bob called me, he was asking me if I had the tapes, and I couldn't find them. I didn't know where they were. Sure enough, I think what they released was off of the cassettes from Elektra. So the sound quality is not that great. But I found in my mother's attic the actual, like, final DAT that was, you know, mastered, or like maybe right before mastering. So maybe at some point we can put that out as, you know, the full sonically like masterpiece that is. So while we don't have actual material that was never heard, like the Chris like Black Bastards classic does exist.
At this point, I'd like to give a shout out to Dante Ross, who was joining us watching.
Oh shit.
So what's up, Dante?
Yeah.
My next question is from Ill Phil. What was it like transitioning from artist to label head with Hoppa? And what's keeping Curious's Constipated Monkey off of streaming services?
I have no idea about why that isn't on streaming. And yeah, I mean, it was just difficult to, you know, to manage like being an artist and the business side all at once. You know, and then you also get into having to like, you know, control like just artists who are kind of crazy sometimes, you know, and like you deal with yourself being an artist crazy as well. So it was tough to juggle that whole scenario. And but I mean, it was fulfilling to see that side of the business as well, and to see what goes into like every aspect on like an independent that's working under a major. So it was, you know, it was fulfilling.
My next question is from Mark P. Soul. Before you guys broke up, could you have done another Third Base album?
I mean, we broke up like right in the middle of like a tour, like right. I mean, our album hadn't even fully maximized what it was going to do, so it wasn't even close to doing a new album. So I mean, we kind of like shot ourselves in the foot even on the second album, because that probably would have sold a lot more if we stayed together. I mean, we only put out the first two singles, and that was it.
T Smooth On. You made a notable change on your flow between the Cactus album and Dust to Dust. Gladiator was basically the precursor to the flow we saw you use primarily on Dust to Dust, which included more repetition. What prompted the change?
It just like surroundings, just like playing around with new ideas. You know, just what you're feeling in the studio, just at that point. You know, just writing differently. And also, like, you know, there was so many other. I mean, like Das Effects had pretty much influenced everybody at that point for a short period of time. So there was a lot of change lyrically right around then. Like by osmosis, you just kind of you know, are affected by it, I think. And, you know, just trying to transition yourself, trying to get, you know, new and fresh material.
Why was
Definitely.
there